Ah, ah.
We can't hear you at all, Rabbi Stephen. That's true.
To transform Yom HaShoah from a day in which we are spectators to one in which we feel like participants. Until now, we have relied on the survivors of the Holocaust, the eyewitnesses, to tell their stories. On Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, we listen to the testimony of the survivors with even greater attention and reverence in order to absorb what they have endured in every fiber of our being. But soon, the only ones left to tell the story will be those who did not live through the events themselves. It will fall to succeeding generations, as the Passover Haggadah teaches, to repeat the narrative and re-experience it as if they themselves were there. Thus, we must now begin to transfer the task of Zachor, of remembrance, to the next generation. The Shoah will be remembered only if all Jews can declare, although we were not physically there, we too are survivors. What follows is an attempt to create such an observance. There is no event in Jewish history that is remembered without ritual. Only through the formalized ritual enacted each year on Yom HaShoah, as the Exodus from Egypt is enacted each year on Passover, can we prevent the Holocaust from being a footnote in Jewish history. Tonight, we enact a ritual in the form of a Seder for the remembrance of the Shoah. The Seder consists of 4 parts. Korban Gashmi, physical destruction. Korban Ruhani, spiritual destruction. Korban Banim Ubanot, the destruction of children. Gevura, resistance. Each of our 4 component activities that are designed to affect memory. Hachana, preparatory focus. Dibor, verbalization, which includes reading in unison, testimony, Hebrew song, Yiddish song, English reading. Ma'aseh, reenactment. Machshava, reflection. Through the ritual enactment of each of the 4 parts of the Seder, we will strive to feel as if we ourselves were there, as if we too are survivors, as if we too experience the Shoah.
I want to invite Isaac Gell to come join Jessica for the next one.
The Passover Seder Haggadah begins with words written in Aramaic language. Lo machmo anu. This is the poor bread. Aramaic was the language of most of our people at the time in Jewish history, and we welcomed everyone to join us in celebrating Yetziat Mitzrayim, our going out of Egypt, in their language. Tonight we begin Yom HaShoah Seder Haggadah with the words written in the Yiddish language.
Das ist gerne lassen. Mit der Rosche gemacht mal, hat gezwungen, unsere Eltern zu tragen in die Länder von Europa. Der Zeit von der restlichen Form von unser Volk Israel.
Yiddish was the language of the vast majority of our martyrs, both in contemporary European Jewish history. When we call upon everyone to join us in commemorating this great destruction in their language. I'm going to read the English below. This is the yellow bag that the evil one made his name to erase, forced our people to wear in the land of Europe. And during this time of great destruction of our people.
Alle Deutschen von unserem Volk Israel. Viele, die noch nicht geboren sind und haben zusammen gestanden bei Har Sinai, bekommen der herrliche Teure.
All of the generations of our people Israel, even those yet unborn, stood at Mount Sinai, and together we received the Holy Torah.
Und alle Deutschen von unserem Volk Israel viele, die noch nicht geboren sind, seien über mit unseren Brüdern und dem ewigen Salutigen unsere Brüder und Schwestern bedeutet.
And all the generations of our people Israel, even those yet unborn, now stand together with us. And together we mourn the eternal loss of our martyred brothers and sisters. Shalom Lebracha. May their memory be uplifted.
Everyone's invited to stand. If you have not yet pinned your star, to please do so, and we'll join together.
Und tiefen Treue, mit festen Erfreuen, mit Zahl, mit Covid, tragen wir die dortige Gale Latte.
In deep sorrow, with steadfast responsibility, with pain and with honor, we wear this yellow.
Even, though wir kicken die Jerusha, was unsere Brüder und Schwestern bedeuten, haben uns vertraut.
We will forever guard it.
We got to go live in fact. Wir wollen erzählen unsere Kinder.
And you shall tell your children.
We begin by lighting 6 candles as we sing Ani Maamin, the Jewish anthem of ultimate faith, sung by many during the Holocaust. Please rise, and I'll invite our Kinneret choir to sing a first round of Animani. We invited groups to come forward. Now we have them in mind as I light the 6 candles, and in a moment we hear the entire choir. The first candle honoring our survivors who are here in person, on Zoom, listening by phone. The second candle honoring the second generation, children of the Shoah, of the survivors, carrying forward the legacy of their parents. The third candle honoring the third generation, as well as the many children who are with us tonight, and in memory of the 1 million and more children perished in the Shoah. The fourth candle remembers Holocaust survivors who have been a part of our Bayit. Their pictures were on the slideshow as we came in. And especially remembering Helen Sarosi, a survivor who died just a few months ago. Prayers for our survivors in need of health and healing. The fifth candle honors and remembers those who risked their lives to save individuals in the Shoah, many known as righteous Gentiles. And the sixth honors those of us who are here, carrying on the names and memories of those who perished. We remain standing for a few moments for those who are able. Earlier today in Israel, in the morning, a siren sounded. Everyone and everything stopped. Buses and cars, trains, and light rails. People inside their homes and outside their homes, in school and at playgrounds, and stood still for 1 minute to remember, as we will now. Maybe. Korban Gashmi, physical destruction. Hachana, preparatory focus. The Shoah brought about the near decimation of the Jewish population of Europe. 6 million Jewish souls were extinguished in a devastating physical destruction. A Korban Gashmi. Let us pause now and focus our thoughts before we speak of what occurred. Before verbalization, please read with me. As Jews entered the modern world, they wanted to believe that a nearly 2,000-year-old legacy of religious hatred had ended. The rise of modern anti-Semitism in the late 19th century did not deter the Jewish drive for complete and sustained emancipation. After World War I, German Jewry looked optimistically toward a future of increased acceptance and economic advancement in their homeland. But the evil one, who rose to power in 1933 along with his henchmen, masterfully wove together the medieval anti-Semitism of the church and new theories of racial superiority, which swept along millions of Germans who were open to accept his message or too complacent to oppose it. Jews were considered Untermenschen, lower forms of life, to be eliminated from the universe. Kristallnacht in November 1938 was an ominous foreboding of what was to come. A long, violent night of rampage and destruction left the ancient synagogues of Germany and Austria shattered and vast numbers of Jewish properties destroyed. The systematic elimination of the Jews began in September 1939 with the start of World War II. The final solution of the Jewish people proceeded in 3 stages, mounting in intensity in the wake of German conquest. First, ghettos were established. Then in 1941, with the invasion of Russia, Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing units, began operations. Finally, the annihilation of millions of Jews from every European country, west to east, religious and secular, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, was carried out by gassing, by slave labor, or by atrocious, perverted medical experimentation in the death camps. As the atrocities unfolded, nations and individuals stood by in silence. The Vatican, too, turned its back on the Jews of Europe. I invite forward Akira Kress to read the testimony of Joseph Guthrie.
One day, when I was 15 years old, I said goodbye to my mother and sisters and left for work, not knowing at the time that it was the last goodbye I would ever say to them. At 12 p.m. that day, we SS sisters selected 100 youngest people out of a group of over 200 people. I was one of them. Soon after that, we were moved to Markstadt, a camp that was also in Germany. Markstadt was surrounded by electric barbed wire and was guarded by many German soldiers and dogs. The camp itself and the buildings were managed by the Heathen Rat and Jewish Catholics. The camp was a living house. We woke up at 5 a.m. every day. At 6 a.m. we were counted. If any one of the sprinklers was missing, everyone else had to wait outside until he was accounted for, often for several hours, regardless of the weather. We had to walk 3 miles to the work area and then 3 miles back again when the workday was over at 6 p.m. We were counted again upon re-entering camp. In the evening, our meal consisted of 1 ladle of water received containing potatoes in their skins and some grease. There was never any meat. We usually tried to wait until the end together serving, but we could get a few more potatoes from the bottom of the vat. With these rations and the hard labor, after 6 months, most prisoners were all skins and bones. Every week, hundreds of prisoners died, and meant nothing to the Germans. They were placed to death immediately, without a second thought. Imagine my surprise when I one day saw my 2 brothers among their prisoners. In October of 1944, we were ordered to evacuate the camp. We began a 15-mile march. That was the worst part of marching. We called it death marches. We ate good food for days at a time. At night, we slept outside and slept. Anyone who couldn't march was killed on the spot. When I was liberated, I was 20 years old and weighed 40 pounds. It was a miracle of God that I lived to this day. I don't know how I survived. The few of us who were still alive when they liberated us saw the light of day for the first time, and we thank God for being free. We were so shocked that we forgot how to laugh or be happy. We were like newborns, not knowing what to do. We had to learn how to do everything all over again.
Charmaine. Oh, God.
We'll invite the Kinneret choir back for Al Eila and Ibochia.
Gotta go to the bathroom. I got the check ready. You have to check it for me. I don't know what happened to the. There we go.
Ani bochia, ani bochia. Ani bochia, ani bochia. Ani
Then pray. Wieder bei unser Einstellung never bei den mit dir da so reisen bleiben uns zu warten. Dark enough though the fire aus Arum schon brennt. Und ihr steht und guckt, als euch sehr mit Valentine. Und ihr steht und guckt, als euch unser Städte brennt. It is burning. Dear sisters, brothers, it is burning. Our poor little town is burning. Angry winds with the flame. Everything is on fire. And we stand by helplessly with folded hands and stare while und guckt da soll sie unsere Schwester und Brüder sind still to pray. Invite Evie Oberstein to come forward and read It's Enough, Long Enough. Oh my God.
It's really long and obeying your feet every day. On this prayer, stay covered up. And your feet are getting hotter. You are four sore feet. Marching along in the feet. Looking up 846. Looking up the door. With all the doors that are being opened. For this. And with all the words, must sort every day. While your feet still of places far, far away. Back up those feet. Think and people. They must march and suffer and live on faith. Move on my feet so you have no right to rest when others do. So think about your future, think about your future. Today you must run and run, you must run. Soon we'll be happy and free. The day will come. Yeah. When we walk slowly and slowly.
Mindset, reenactment. In this Korban Gashmi, this mass physical destruction, not only were lives and property destroyed, but personal dignity was also extinguished. We now ask you to remove your shoes and place them behind you. To symbolically experience the loss of all our possessions, we ask you to remove your watch and jewelry and to empty your pockets. Place them behind you as well. We now pass around potato peels. As we eat this poor food, we try to feel even more sharply the pain of our sisters and brothers during the Shoah. A few of our queens or teens could come forward, take a bowl of the potato peels and distribute them by section. Continue to distribute them. We'll also continue through the Haggadah. Machshava, reflection. Having reenacted the Korban Gashmi, we pause now to reflect on how each of us would have encountered such horrors. First, we were shorn of our possessions. Then we were shorn of our dignity. Then we were shorn of our lives. We imagine ourselves as if we had personally, each one of us experienced the Shoah.
Korban Ruchani, spiritual destruction. Hachana, preparatory focus. Please join me. Not only were 6 million Jews physically murdered, but the evil one also sought to destroy our religious and spiritual life, to bring about a Korban Ruchani, a spiritual destruction. Let us pause now and focus our thoughts before we speak of what occurred. Dibur, verbalization. A world of souls was destroyed by the evil one, and at the same time, the soul of a people was imperiled. A millennium of religious and cultural creativity was extinguished as the victims perished. In an effort to calculate the enormity of the tragedy, Professor Salo Baron told the Eichmann trial, "It is no exaggeration to say that Polish Jewry alone produced between 1937 and 1939 more works of Torah than in any decades of the 17th or 18th century. These scholars were heirs to a 500-year-old tradition of yeshiva learning that was the glory of Poland and the pride of Lithuania. They produced a body of literature that enriched not only enthusiastic Kandanim or educators and Baalei Batzalim or households in Eastern Europe, but also Jews in America, Zion, and elsewhere in the world. Eastern European Jewry could have continued a flowering of rabbinic learning for another 1,000 years. That world was destroyed. Among secular Jews, too, the period before 1939 included years of great intellectual and artistic creativity. Scores of journals, periodicals, and books in Hebrew, Yiddish, Ladino, as well as the local language, were produced by Jews on Jewish and general topics. These writers and thinkers are no more. What did the world lose because Jewish blood was so cheap, too? Eminent Jewish scientists and scholars in medicine, law, and numerous other fields who brought honor and renown to their native countries, were put to death merely because they were Jews. When we mourn a Jewish world that was lost, we must also mourn the loss to the world of what these victims, so cruelly annihilated, could have contributed. Now, invite up Josefa Augustine to read an account of survivor Helen Sarosy. My name is Helen Sarosy. I was born on the 29th of June, 1924 in the city of Valls, Czechoslovakia. My family lived there for many years. I have 2 older sisters and 1 sister. As a child, I had to speak different languages because my family lived in part of the country formerly known as Austria-Hungary. It was become Hungary again in 1950. My family was a happy and wealthy family until all of that was taken away in 1944. My family was taken to Warsaw, Poland, where we stayed in hiding for 3 years until we were separated by the church. My 2 sisters, father and brother, were together. This was the last time I saw my father. I stayed back with my mother because I didn't want her to be. The first night of peace off, people came to the house and said, "Pack your bags. Tomorrow morning you are going to be taken to Auschwitz." I cannot begin to tell you how striking. The moment it began, we were treated like first gathered in a gap, then pushed into cattle transport with barely any space. But this was just. When we arrived at Auschwitz, every mother and child were separated into the. I tried 3 times to pull my mother into my lap, but Mandela pushed me away all. This was the last time. As I walked away, the only thing I watched was my mother inching closer and closer to me. When we stopped walking, we were stripped of our clothes and thrown into a corner. Our heads were shaved, and we were given a piece of cloth with a number. When people were not fit to do the work they were commanded to do, they were sent to the front like that. Every morning we woke up quite early and the SS officers took my. One morning, people put blankets over me because there was a 3 in the morning. The SS officers could not see me in the fifth row, so they searched for me using helicopters and hunting dogs until they found me. My punishment was that I was thrown against the first wall in front of her. People were shouting and she died, but I did not. Until this day, I don't understand. I'm lucky to know how consent shapes of opinions work, which is what the punishment usually is for people who are offended. The little amount of food that they give us is only filled in hours. I still have a distant memory of my last day. It is still so hard. The Nazis left cheese on the sheet as the Nazis fell. I begged the Polish family to stay with me. Let me stay with them until I had somewhere to go, because it was cold on the streets. 3 days later, I told the Soviet Union about Auschwitz, and they fed me from Auschwitz, but without any. They forced me to make a difficult 3-month journey back to my home in Czechoslovakia by taking ferries. The Red Cross was able to track down my sister. I was not able to be the same person for 3 years. For 15 years, I was still afraid to express my Jewish background. Now I'm happy to be where I am. I cannot believe that I survived and not enough. So how did I? Welcome up the SAR choir will lead us in the Mary Israel.
Even better.
Tefillah al Achilat Chametz, a reading, a prayer before eating chametz. In Bergen-Belsen in 1944, there was no matzah in Bergen-Belsen for Pesach in 1944. It was decided that bread could be eaten preceded by the tefillah. We'll say it all together, first in Hebrew, followed by English. Our Father in heaven, just so we know that it is our
desire to do your will and to observe Pesach by eating matzah and by observing the prohibition concerning
but to our grace, our victory,
prevents us from doing so. And our lives are hanging in the balance.
We are hereby prepared and ready to go from the class and living by Torah and not by. And so I pray before you that you allow us to live on and that you redeem us so that we can soon fulfill your laws
And serve you with a full of heart. And
Ma'aseh, reenactment. In this Korban Ruchani, the spiritual destruction, Jewish learning was under attack. To reenact the pain of the loss of opportunities for learning, we take a sheet imprinted with the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph, and symbolic of our Torah, and rip it in half. We'll take one page right here in the front, and we will set it on fire. As in the story of the 10 martyrs, the parchment burns, but the letters ascend towards heaven. Because they try to undermine our dignity and take away our names by tattooing a number on our arms, we ask that you stamp a number on your arm. We'll pass around a few, and as they come to you, just keep passing them around and back. As the few are passed around, if you choose, please stamp it on your arm. Machshava, reflection. Having reenacted the Korban Ruchani, we pause now to reflect on how each of us would have encountered such horrors. First, we were shorn of our possessions. Then we were shorn of our dignity. Then we were shorn of our lives. We imagine ourselves as if we had personally, each one of us, experienced the Shoah. Banim ubanot. Destruction of children. Achana, preparatory focus. The Churban Banim ubanot brought about the breakup of countless families and the murder of 1 million of our children. Our link to the future, the symbol of our hopes and dreams. Let us pause now and focus our thoughts before we speak of what occurred. Dibur, verbalization. Please read together with me out loud. From the abyss,
the
the Hasidic Rebbe, Hieronymus Talmud Shapiro, cried out, "How can the universe remain standing and not turn into chaos? How do we fathom the deaths of almost 1.5 million children? Today, they would have been among our teachers and leaders, writers and poets, rabbis and artists. They would have been the mothers and fathers of a Jewish world that is no more. In 1930, for example, nearly 120,000 Jews lived in Bohemia, Moravia, and Silesia. By October 1945, only 14,000 remained, among them only 1,200 children. At Auschwitz-Birkenau, it was children and their mothers, the weakest and least useful for slave labor, who were selected first for extermination. Why were they murdered? The answer on one level can be found in the irrationality of the evil one's anti-Semitism. All Jews were equal in their eyes. All Jews were enemies. The youngest child and the sage were all linked together by the evil one's hatred. But even more terrible was the evil one's recognition that children were, as they always have been, the future. We will never know what those murdered children would have contributed to our communities, to our people, and to the world. We can only hold fast to our own children, our own future generation. We can only strive to safeguard the continuity of our people. Ovan banim uvanot, destruction of children. I would like to invite up Carly Leff Newhouse to read testimony by survivor Rita Posalski.
My name is Rita Posalski. I was born in Poland, to a warm, loving family. I'm a child survivor. I was 7 or 8 years old when the war broke out. I survived by pretending to be a Catholic child. Oh, sorry. I survived by pretending to be a Catholic child, living with Polish farmers and keeping my true identity hidden. When the war broke out, my family was placed in a ghetto. My parents knew that if I stayed with them in the ghetto, I wouldn't survive. They had a Polish woman teach me everything about being Catholic, so I would be well prepared. My parents entrusted me to this woman. As I left their house, my mother told me, "You better go. I don't want to see you coming back." This was the last time I saw my mother and my younger twin siblings. After a little while, the woman I was staying with decided it was too risky to keep me anymore, since several neighbors were becoming suspicious. I left her and just walked and walked with nowhere to go, all the while terrified someone might find out who I really was, a Jew. Although I was young, I understood that it was necessary to leave my family, lest I be killed with them. As I was walking on a road in the countryside, a farmer stopped his horse and buggy and inquired as to where I was going. I responded, saying I was looking for a home. He said, "Hop on." I told the farmer my story, that I was a Catholic child whose parents had died. He promised to find a family that would take me, and that he did. For 3 years, I lived with these farmers, helping them with various chores, including taking the cows out to graze for hours every day. All the while, I lived in constant fear that they would find out my true identity. Every minute of every day and night, I had to concentrate on speaking Polish with a perfect Polish accent.
without anyone to get into my speech. This was extremely difficult and a stressful way to live. I dared not show any recognition. All I was thinking about was surviving another hour, another day, another year. One morning, the farmers told me I was talking in my sleep the night before and that it sounded like I was speaking Jewish. My heart started racing. I thought back and told them that it must be because I was playing a game of Catch the Jews or something like that with the nearby children. And that must have been what I was talking about in my sleep. This, among other incidents, was a moment of life or death. After the war ended around Passover time in the month of Nisan, I decided to escape. I snuck out of the farmer's house at dawn and just started running. I ran and ran through the fields and the forest, terrified the entire time that the farmer was running after me and that I would soon be caught. When I couldn't run anymore, I glanced back, didn't see anyone coming after me, and just collapsed out of exhaustion. Soon I arrived at the nearest town, Kazminets. In Kazminets, many newly liberated Jews, mostly men, wandered about searching for lost family members. When I told them that I as well was Jewish, they didn't believe me. I found out there were hardly any surviving. On turning 10, the farmers decided I should receive Holy Communion at the church, along with all the other Catholic children my age. At church, the priest asked me some brief questions before the ceremony, such as where are you from and where is your family? I answered with my story, trying to be as convincing as I could. Following the communion ceremony, the priest came over to me and said, "All right, child, I know everything." I walked away petrified. I knew that he knew the truth. Thankfully, he didn't reveal my secret. There was another moment of life. On January 1st, 1945, a group of Russian soldiers came to the farmer's door asking for bread. They informed the farmers, with me standing behind listening, that the war was over and they were on their way to liberate the camps. Although I was somewhat happy to hear the news that I could now be free, I couldn't leave the farmers. I had nowhere to go. So I stayed and kept on pretending to be a Catholic child. I then returned to my hometown, Lunijau, in the hopes of finding survivors for my family. There were none. I found out from the few survivors in the town that my parents were taken away to a crematorium near my hometown. My parents were last seen being taken away to their deaths on pallets. The town of Lunijau itself was almost completely destroyed. Although my immediate family had perished, I found a surviving aunt with whom I stayed with for a little while. She sent me to the nearest school. I was the only Jewish child in my class. Although the war was over, the hatred for Jews still existed. There were anti-Semitic Poles killing Jews, and it was a very unsafe environment. Therefore, I went to Lodz, where there was a larger Jewish community that could provide more safety. I joined the kibbutz in the hopes of someday immigrating to Palestine to start a new life in a Jewish home. Although it did not work out with that kibbutz, I did manage to leave Poland. An uncle that lived in England found out through the Red Cross that I had survived and sponsored me to join the Navy. Soon after, I journeyed to
I'm honored to invite the SAR choir back to sing Hamal Achago Elohi. Stephen said it's not traditional to clap on Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaShoah, but we thank you for joining us and appreciate how much you added to this evening, especially in this part about the children. I now want to invite Rav Avi to sing Oifen Prophet.
Joy. Brenda Fire, und ich his head, und everlasting. Getting so tired of seeing and Galus Vedim Oistebuchi Vai Zoti Bundu Oislai Oyashetim Kotinze Arai Zoti Bundu Oislai Oyashetim the teacher.
Ask Ruth Brenda Caronian to read Never Saw Another Butterfly. All joined in. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone. Such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. For 7 weeks I've lived in here, pinned up inside this ghetto, but I have found what I love here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut branches in the court, only I never saw another butterfly. That butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here in the ghetto. Maaseh, reenactment. In the Churban Banim Ubanot, as we seek to experience the suffering of families torn apart, we ask all children to separate from their parents and move over there where I'm pointing in the special corner, if you feel comfortable doing so. Machshava, reflection. Having reenacted the Churban Banim Ubanot, we pause now to reflect on how each of us would have encountered such horrors. First, we were shorn of our possessions. Then we were shorn of our dignity. Then we were shorn of our lives. We imagine ourselves as if we had personally, each of us, experienced the Shoah.
Gvura, resistance. Hachana, preparatory focus. Tonight is not only Yom HaShoah, a day to remember the destruction. It is also Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura, a day to remember the inspiring physical and spiritual heroism of our people as they resisted the assaults of the evil one. Let us pause now and focus our thoughts before we speak of what occurred. Dibur, verbalization. Please read with me. In the midst of the darkness of the Holocaust, we desperately seek the light of heroism. We search for the names of the heroes who led the uprising in Treblinka and the courageous fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto. We take pride in the exploits of the Jewish partisan fighters who took up arms against all odds and, alone and abandoned, fought the enemy. but the light of heroism encompasses the vast majority of Jews, including those who perished, those who manifested spiritual resistance. We recall the unnamed teachers who continued teaching in the ghetto schools, thereby declaring to the world that even in the face of death, the learning of Torah must go on. We recall the many whose identity as Jews was strengthened in the ghettos, among them those who could have passed on the Aryan side, but chose instead to share the fate of their people. We recall the courageous editors and writers who published clandestine newspapers to raise the spirit of their fellow Jews. All of these journals and written accounts from the ghettos and the camps were inspired by a single overriding urgent imperative: to make sure the world will know what had happened. We recall, finally, the heroism of the survivor generation, the She'eri Takuleta, who, despite the devastating losses they suffered, moved beyond despair to rebuild their lives, enriching all of us materially and spiritually over the years. All those who were victims of the Shoah are holy. Tonight we seek to partake in some measure of their holiness by attempting to relive their experience. Those who went to their death with Shema Yisrael on their lips are holy believers, and those who went to their death asking, "Where is God?" are no less holy. They are, in Rabbi Eliezer Berkovitz's words, holy disbelievers. I invite forward Eveline Appel, together with Gavri Davis, for Gavri to share her stories.
I was born in Paris in 1932. Before the war, my life was relatively uneventful. My father brought me candy every Friday, and I watched Charlie Chaplin movies in school. Everything was pretty normal until September 1st of 1939, when the Germans invaded Poland, and France and England declared war. I left Paris 3 days before the Germans came, and my family was very lucky to catch a train to a little village in the center of France.
I am very honored to be here. Thank you, Rabbi, for inviting me. Thank you, Rabbi. My family, that is my father, my mother, and my sister Rachel, who was 10 years older than Ryan, we were a very lucky family. We survived the war. My parents were born in Warsaw, Poland, lived in very religious homes. My mother, the second youngest child of 9 children, went to Polish school, learned how to play the piano. They were comfortable. But my father, the youngest of 3 children, lived in extreme poverty, having lost his father when he was 3. Started to work when he was 12 years old. He learned a trade which sustained him all his life. He made ladies' handbags. He became a craftsman, an artisan. At 18, he became secular and joined the Jewish Socialist Party called the Bund and fought all his life for better conditions for workers. After the war, in 1921, he went to Belgium, where he met my mother. They were married in Brussels on January 6, 1922, and Rachel was born a year later. My father tried a few times to come to America, but to no avail. In 1926, they moved to Paris, where they joined the Bund, and Rachel went to Yiddish school. I was born in 1932, and at that time, the law was, if your parents were foreigners, you had to be naturalized. So at the age of 1 year old, I was naturalized and became a French citizen, the first in a family. My father also joined the French Socialist Party, and with political connections, was able to obtain French citizenship for his family. So in 1938, my parents and Rachel became French citizens. In France, before the war, Jews from Poland did not receive French citizenship. I had a very pleasant early childhood. I went to kindergarten, where they showed us Charlie Chaplin movies. We called them Chapeau. September 1, 1939, everything changed. The Germans invaded Poland. France and England declared war against Germany. Then they invaded Holland, and on May 10, 1940, Belgium fell, and they started to march through France. Panic. My father said, where the Germans are, I do not want to be, so let's try to leave. On June 11, 1940, 3 days before they marched to Paris, we fled to a small village in the center of France, in the Massif Central, mountains similar to the Catskills. My parents rented a small room above a watchmaker's shop. The next morning, I woke up and saw my father in front of the mirror saying, I am more gray. He became gray overnight. He had beautiful hair, beautiful black hair the day before. A week later, the town crier went around beating his drum and called everyone to the village square, where the mayor announced in tears that France had signed an armistice with Germany. Our country had lost the war. I asked my father, what does armistice mean? He explained to me that it was the end of the war, but we Jews were in danger because of a very bad man called Hitler. France was divided in two parts. The occupied zone from the north to the center of France, Paris included, and the rest of the country became the free zone, ruled by the Vichy government. We were very lucky to be in a free zone area. So we went to Lyon, the second largest city in France. We rented an apartment outside of Lyon. My father worked in the apartment. Rachel went to work for a big French company. I went to school, and my mother had the hard task to try to feed us. The winter of 1940-41 was very harsh, and the Germans took everything, food and fuel. It was hard. Other Burundis came to Lyon, so they formed a resistance network. Being French citizens, my family was at an advantage, and they used that advantage to help other Jews. Rachel, 18 at the time, became their courier. My father made her pocketbook with a false bottom to store false identity papers inside. Rachel, as part of her position in the network, would travel by bus or train and deliver false papers to Jews in hiding. She would help families to memorize their new identity, speak to them in Yiddish if they did not speak French, and sometimes travel with them to the Spanish or Swiss border. In 1941, Suzanne Buisson, who had been in a high echelon of the French Socialist Party, came to see my father and asked him, "Will you help us?" My father said yes. So she gave him propaganda pamphlets to distribute and paste on walls in Lyon. That was very dangerous. He then became the liaison between the two resistance networks. Suzanne Buisson was arrested by the Gestapo in 1943 and deported. In the Montmartre section of Paris, there is a square, Suzanne Buisson, resistance. We had people staying in our apartment from time to time. A couple come from Belgium, stayed with us almost 6 months. They never went out. My mother risked her life to provide food for everyone. She was Mother Courage. France had the highest rate of Jewish survivors of all the countries in Europe. I think it is due to having a free zone for more than 2 years. These visas sailed out of France, and families with enough cash could hide in little villages and blend with the scenery. My parents had friends who were hiding in a very small village, and they mailed us a rabbit. My mother declared to us, "It is a chicken." We did not argue with her. We were so happy to eat meat. We had a radio and listened to the BBC every night to hear real news. One night, Churchill spoke to us in perfect French and told us, "We shall not forget you." It was so uplifting. Churchill was a great man. In November 1942, the American army landed in North Africa and the Germans occupied Lyon. We lost our naturalization and became foreign Jews. So we fled to Grenoble in the Alps, which was occupied by the Italian army who did not bother Jews. In Grenoble, as in Lyon, my father worked in the apartment we rented. Rachel worked in an office. I went to school, and my mother would pass checkpoints and go to farms outside of Grenoble, bringing us with food. The resistance became more intense, and life became more dangerous. One time, Rachel had to go to a very important net meeting run by the network. She got sick and could not go. So my mother went in her place. It was very risky, but she went anyway. In the fall of 1943, the Germans occupied Grenoble and all France, and we were trapped. In the middle of the night, we were awakened by instant ringing of the bell, knocking on the door. The French police were looking for Italian deserters as we lived in an Italian neighborhood. Of course, we did not know that. We thought they were looking for Jews. My father decided not to open the door. The police was ready to force the door down, but luckily, our neighbors told them, "They're old people. people living here who are never home. The police left, but I was shaking for the rest of the night. Our neighbors saved our lives, but we were no longer safe. I was sent to a Catholic boarding school in the mountains where I went to mass every Sunday, went skiing, and pretended to be happy. But in early 1944, Jewish children were arrested by the Gestapo in a nearby convent. So my parents decided to send me to Switzerland. A group of parents, most of them Burmese, hired a passeur, a smuggler, and I joined a group of 10 children and took the train from Grenoble to Annemasse, a border town. Along with us were a married couple. The wife was very pregnant, and she began having labor pains in the train. On our arrival to the town, the smuggler told us to wait for him at the train station, and he took the couple to a hotel. He came back and took us to a field behind bushes, telling us to lie still and wait for his return. It was very cold and getting dark, and in front of us was a road with German tanks and big trucks passing by. The oldest among us had a thermos with hot coffee and crawled from child to child, giving us a sip. I will never forget him. Meanwhile, at the hotel, the smuggler had been arrested and gave away our location to the French police, who took us in custody. The officer at the station was given carte blanche by his superior. That is, do what you want. So instead of delivering us to the Germans, they took us to a boarding school. From there, the lady principal and her assistant lived their lives by sneaking us to the French-Swiss border. And we climbed a barbed wire fence to safety. Because I climbed that barbed wire fence, I have grandchildren today. In Switzerland, we were arrested by the authorities as we were illegal aliens. We were taken to an internment camp called Le Camp du Bout du Monde, the camp of the end of the world. We were not treated well, slept on wooden floors, and were not well fed. I was hungry all the time, but they saved our lives. I then was placed in a foster home in Basel, then to a convent, then to another foster home in a little village near the Lake of Thun. I was very unhappy and very worried about my parents and Rachel. During the war, names of Rachel, Sarah, David, or Jacob were death sentences. So Rachel became Raymonde, officially, and to all her friends. The American Army liberated Grenoble on my birthday, August 22, 1944. And on that day, a friend of the family came to the street where they lived, and in front of the window, shouted with all her strength, Rachel! They were free. In March 1945, I came back to Grenoble and was reunited with my family. A month later, we returned to Paris. We had survived. I would like to say to you that we Jews will survive no matter what happens. I want to end by reading to you a small essay written 300 years ago by a French philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who lived from 1712 to 1778. Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the Jews. A startling
and unique spectacle to see a people expatriated, having no land for over 2,000 years, a people damaged, blamed, mixed with strangers for even a longer time, rejected, a people dispersed throughout the world, a people persecuted, despised by all nations, still conserving their customs, their laws, their traditions. Athens, Sparta, Rome perished and left no children on earth. Zion, destroyed, did not lose their children. They saved them, they multiplied, extending throughout the world, and they always recognized each other. They mixed with all people, were never confounded. They have no chief, but are always a people. They have no country, but are always citizens.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you. We're going to take Gavri's summary of your story and add it into our synagogue records. And in future years, we will read that as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story. Such an honor for us. Please join me. Oh. The sand that I see, the ground. Full chant from Ezekiel chapter 37.
ויוצאני ברוח אדוני, ויניחני בתוך הבקעה, והיא מלאה צמות, והעבירני עליהם סביב סביב, והנה רבות מאוד על פני הבקעה, והנה יבשות מאוד, ויאמר אלי בן אדם, התחיינה העצמות האלה, ואומר אדוני אלוהים אתה ידעת, ויאמר
We didn't go to visit our bank.
בן
What are we
אדם
doing tomorrow?
העצמות האלה, כל בית ישראל המה
Tomorrow Haruka's coming.
אומרים כבשו עצמותינו ויעבדה תקוותנו לעולם. לכן נווה ויאמרת עליהם, כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, הנה אני פותח את קברותיכם. ועליתי אתכם מקברותיכם אני, והבאתי אתכם אל אדמת ישראל. וידעתם כי אני אדוני, בפתחי את קברותיכם, ובהלותי אתכם מקברותיכם אני, ונתתי רוחי בכם, וחיתם, והנחתי אתכם על אדמתכם. וידעתם כי אני אדוני, דיברתי ועשיתי נאום אדוני.
Ezekiel's prophecy inspires this poem, The Dry Bones, written by Rav Avi's father, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Weiss, at Auschwitz, which was Ashvenshim, his hometown. Please read with me. There I stood on a little hill in the Auschwitz death camp, surrounded by blocks and barracks, where inmates lived, suffered, died, under the black smokestacks of the ovens, encircled by the stark whiteness of snow and ash and bone. The Polish guide explained, the grass on these plains grows abundantly in summer and spring, blue grass fed by the fertilizer under the soil. Come back after winter and see how lovely it is. There I stood, praying the ashes could somehow cohere, recalling the question posed to Ezekiel in the valley, can these bones live? And there came a noise, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone, the sinews and the flesh upon them, and the skin covered them above, and the breath came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Behold, O my people, I will open your graves, and cause you to come out of your graves, and bring you to the land of Israel. There I stood on a lofty mountain in Jerusalem. Before me, the vast host of the Jewish people, in schoolrooms, in cities, in factories, in villages, in battle, in peace. God, remember the souls of the departed, and guard over the resurrected children of Israel in the land of Israel. As Geburah led to a reclaiming of personal dignity, we now ask you to put your shoes back on, to replace your watches and jewelry and the contents of your pockets. We ask children to rejoin their families. Reenacted Geburah, we pause now to reflect on how each of us would have encountered such horrors. First, we were shorn of our possessions. Then we were shorn of our dignity. Then we were shorn of our lives. We imagine ourselves as if we had personally, each one of us, experienced the Shoah. We have reflected, retold, and re-experienced. We conclude with El Malei Rachamim, Kaddish, and Shira Partizanim, the partisan hymn, followed by counting the Omer and Hatikvah, Israel's national anthem. We ask everyone to stand. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Meromin, K'ansei menucha nechona al kanfei השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מסירים את כל הנשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים חללי השואה באירופה שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו ושנספו על קידוש השם בידי המרצחים הגרמנים, הנאצים ועוזריהם משאר העמים. לכן בעל הרחמים יסירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וגם עדן תהא מנוחתם ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים ונאמר אמן. Please join me in the mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba B'alma divrach chilutei v'yamrit malchutei בחיי כל וביומי כל ובחיי בכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב במהרה אמן. יהי שמי רבה וברך לעולם לעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי בקודשה בריחו, לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושבילתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירת בעלמה וגבורתה. שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל ואמרו. Thank you, Rabbi, for coming forward. If there are survivors in the room who are able to walk up to the front and join us here as we join in Shira Partizanim, the Partisans hymn. Please join in.
So he came, mullahs, to gates the Metzger. Hotchilin blayena, hashtelin blayetem. Kom mit Bettnuchunse, ausgewählte Schar. Es wird abheugt von uns Gott, wir rennen dort. Kom in Bettnuchunse, ausgewählte Schar. Es wird abheugt von uns Gott, wir rennen dort. Ola Toma Hine, Darki Ha'achronam. Et or hayom yistilu shnei ha'anana ze yom yisavnu lo od ya'al v'yavo Sadeinu od yarim anachnu po ze yom yisavnu lo od ya'al v'yavo Sadeinu od Yarim Manachnu. We say this is the final road for you. Though letting skies may cover over days of blue, as the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. As the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. As became mullahs to gates and let
We're about to count the Omer as the night together comes towards its conclusion. And I'm very aware of the fact that we've said over and over that the numbers of our survivors are dwindling. And the sense that as each Yom HaShoah comes and goes, it feels like we're counting down. But this is the season of counting not down, but counting up. The count of the Omer reminds us that even when the night feels dark, and those who experience the Shoah are dwindling in number of physical presence, as Evelyn said so powerfully, we are growing stronger. We're growing stronger in numbers, stronger in resolve, stronger in resilience, to tell the stories, to never forget, to deepen our bonds to Medinat Yisrael and to all of Am Yisrael. So as we count the Omer, yes, with prayers for peace, as we count the Omer, we remember we're not counting down, we're counting up higher and higher together. Hineni mukhan mezuman, hineni mukhan mezuman, hineni mukhan mezuman, lekayem mitzvat aseh, shel sedirat haomer. Kimosh Torah, Usvachtem lachem imamat hashabat miyom avinachem tomer atnufa shema shabbatot mimotziana אחרת השבת השלי תזכרו 50 יום והקרבתם מנחה חדשה לאדוני ויינועם אדוני אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננה עלינו ומעשה ידינו כוננה ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת העומר היום 12 יום שהם שבוע אחד ו5 ימים לעומר. Thinking about the children whose voices fill this space, the presence of our survivors. I know Reb Shmuel Martyr was here too. What a bastion of strength for our community and all the generations in between. We have so much hope. And we end with Hatikva. Thank you so much to all who are here, if you're able to join us across the hall in the lower level baby draft. We'll daven Mariv at this time. Thank you to Nina and James, our amazing volunteers managing the Zoom and the projection. Thanks to all who joined on Zoom. Again, thank you to Yael, Manora Ochinsky, our programming coordinator, for making this possible. If you'd like to take home a Haggadah, please do. Please share this ritual with others. Thank you to SAR and Kinneret for partnering with us. Good night to all.